the theme of today is uncertainty. So you'll have a huge contribution to everything we have to say today, because it will have affected you all and continue to affect your life and lost you. So the first thing I'd like to say is there are no fire alarms today, but if it does go off, we will need to move out of this room, outside the front door and to the furthest wall. So we're not expecting fire alarms, so hopefully that won't happen. There are toilets here at the back of the room, and there's also toilets out by the bar. So what I'd like you to do is just be comfortable. Make sure you can see and hear the screens. I think there's 3 screens here, so you can. The middle one is not so good, but you can hopefully see the other screens quite clearly. Can you? Yeah. And hopefully you'll be able to hear all the speakers. We're all being mic'd anyway, so that should be good for hearing across the room. And I suppose like the most important thing is, to learn from each other today. I have seen like friendships happen in this room, connections, because you all get each other in ways that nobody else does. And that's what's really important for these days coming together. We had some very difficult times during COVID. And I'm sure a lot of us will remember the first go-to webinars we did. We kept dropping off and coming back, and we persevered to a point where we perfected it. So it's really important to stay connected at all times. And as I said, friendships happen here. So please do talk to the people next to you, make new friends, and have conversations. Okay. If you I probably would ask you all to turn off your phones as well if you can. I see hands shaking down there, which is great. But do that. Take a moment just to say hello to the person next to you. And do remember as well, exercise is a really important part of how we manage ourselves and self-manage ourselves. So if you get uncomfortable in any way, just get up and walk about. There's no harm in doing that at all. So the other thing, Jane is over here in the corner working hard, and she's recording a video that will be available. And I think everybody in the room has agreed to be recorded today. So that will be available for the many people who actually couldn't turn up today. And I was just talking to Emer there, we had a lot more people registered today, but we get that people don't always feel so good on the day, and that is absolutely fine. So there is a resource available to those who can't be here. Okay, so I suppose before I move on to the agenda, I would like to thank, of course, everybody who's here in the room. I'd like to thank our sponsors, AstraZeneca, MSD, Novartis and Pfizer. Thank you for all your support always in getting these 10 years ticked off, I suppose, really every single year, every October, which is fantastic. I'd also like to thank our expert panel. I'm going to introduce them. And probably the most important thing that's happening in this room today is that this seminar is being led out by our Positive Living members. So whatever is happening in the room today, there are real experts speaking. There are 4 corners that Emer is going to talk about, and led by people who really have lived this experience. So it would be really important for you to connect with each person and each corner as you get through the day, and to have those discussions and contribute in the best way that you possibly can. I'd like to thank our own staff who always work very tirelessly, to make sure that these events happen with professionalism and that everybody is supported throughout the day and looked after. So to our CEO Liz, who's here sitting with us, to Kathy Gray, who's here. Where are you, Kathy? There you are, Kathy's waiting. To Jane in the corner here, you've met already. And of course Fiona down the back, who is a Trojan worker. As you all know, anybody visiting our Positive Living groups will know that Fiona is the machine behind the wheels, and always there to help me to get things done, get jobs done. So thank you, Fiona. I'd also like to, I suppose, have a special mention for Kira, who is Fiona's niece, and she has given us some nice goodies for a goodie bag later on that you will have the pleasure of opening maybe when you go for afternoon tea. So there's lots of little gifts here today. And I'd also like to thank Shauna, who's over in the corner there with Ronnie from Body Raw. Shauna, wave up. Shauna is from Body Raw and Sex Shopper. So please go and visit her and you know, see what she has to offer. We had a very interesting talk in Positive Living very recently, and she did give a free prize to everybody in the audience. I won't tell you what it was, but some of you know. And I'd also like to thank Anne Roach and Roaches for their commitment for many, many years in supporting us in whatever we do. So, and to our healthcare professionals, like, where would we be without you? You know, it's tough working at the moment in the HSE, I know that, very challenging. But thank you for all you do for us and how you support the people that we meet on a regular basis. And to you, of course, all of you, for being here today. I do want to give a shout out to the ladies who are working the corners, and I know Emer is actually going to introduce them as well. So over in corner one, we're going to have Saoirse. Saoirse, give us a wave. And Siobhan, who you know very well, over in that corner. And this corner here, we have Anya and Roseanne. Yeah. In the corner over here, we have Hazel and Kira, all waving. And then in the final corner, we have Emer and Cynthia. Yeah. Big wave. So that's your speakers for the day, and it's going to be a fun-filled day. We do have Dr. Michael McCarthy coming along, and we're really pleased to have him. I think he'll come in on the 11th there, will he, Siobhan? Yeah. Yeah, and he'll speed in, turn up, and with Mike and he'll get talking fireside chat with Siobhan, which will be really nice. And we're going to close off the day with Liz's thoughts and take home messages. But we're also going to have a little bit of fun here too, with the silent disco. We have Carl over there in the corner who's managing that for us. Some people in the room have experienced silent disco, I think, have they? Yeah. It's a lot of fun. But it's exercise too, and it's mindfulness. That's why we're doing it, of course. Fun, exercise, and mindfulness. And then we're going to go for afternoon tea. So that's a real treat, and we do that every year. So it's brilliant to be here to offer all of this. I'd like to call on Anne now. Anne is the grandma of our group. I'm Mother Hen, and Anne is grandma. And Anne is going to light a candle for us, of course, because we do this every year. This really is, today to remember and honour our loved ones who we have lost. We've lost a number of people in our group, we're in a positive group. And it is to remember everybody. So remembrance, healing and hope is what we wish for everybody. Here we go. It's like take it. We won't have them ready for long because our hasn't. Some people know about my experience with candles. Christmas time. Oh. This handle here, I would have based on the concept of your days, but me would have made this especially for the lady who pulled out for cancer. Many of us we lost this really long time, and so it's just a show of thanks, symbolic handle it for all the ladies who lost and go away and stuff. Okay, so just tell me a little bit about the Marie Keating. You all know me. I don't really think I need to introduce myself too much, but I am an oncology nurse for many, many years, probably 40 now at this stage. Worked in the UK, did Macedonian Cancer Support as a director of nurse, director of services in its cancer network. Came back to Ireland almost 20 years ago now. Worked in Vincent's as a cancer care coordinator, uro-oncology. And then moved to the Marie Keating Foundation in 2014. So I've done a lot of facilitation work since then. Clare is going to come and talk to us from the NCCP, and we'll tell you a bit about some of the services that we work together very closely with, survivorship programs, etc. So yeah. Okay, so most of you will know that Marie Keating herself died from metastatic breast cancer at the age of 51. And that was really hard on the family at the time. They weren't aware that she was as sick as she was. She didn't really want people to know because she was afraid of doctors, afraid of hospitals, had all her children at home, and unfortunately died from metastatic breast cancer. So foundation has been built on that. And we provide awareness programs for all types of cancer that you can actually make some behavior changes around, and teach people about signs and symptoms. And we also educate men. So we're often thought of as a breast cancer awareness service, but we actually do a lot of education with men, women, marginalised communities, Syrian refugees, Ukrainian refugees, intellectual disability groups and travel groups. So there's a wide berth of what we do. We have a small team, as you know, so some of you will be familiar with very much with what we do. We're a team of 23 staff, and we're a national service, 3 mobile units, and we're out and about. So there's a fundraising aspect to it, obviously, to raise money in order for the nurses to be able to deliver this kind of care. So yeah, it's and we have a triple lock as well, so we're very well trusted by the community, which is really, really important to us. Why do we do what we do? I'm not going to labor on this. We know that 1 or 2 people would be affected by cancer in their lifetime. That's why we do what we do. We educate, we teach, we learn. But more importantly, I think we actually have a mission to make cancer less frightening by enlightenment, because it's still very frightening out there for people. And we want to create a world free from the fear of cancer. And just reminding people as well that we want to be with you every step of the way where we can. And that's at the prevention stage, it's at the supportive stage, it's at the survivorship stage, and it's living beyond. So these are our kind of preventions, services, mobile outreach, corporate wellness programs, schools cancer awareness programs, Talks Cancer podcast. Some of you will have been involved in the breast cancer series, and awareness campaigns. We also have supportive service like Comfort Fund for those who are in financial difficulty from cancer and from treatment. And we have a BRCA support group with information seminars like this one today. And we have an Ask the Nurse helpline, and we have our very wonderful rekeating.ie website now, which has been upgraded and it's fabulous. So if you haven't looked at it, I would actually ask you to go and have a look at that. So we have survivorship services, Survive and Thrive programs, positive living programs, so this is something a lot of you are very much involved in, back to work after cancer. HSC survivorship program for survivors by survivors, and the Survive and Thrive.ie website, and 2-to-1 plus support service from us. Liz is actually chair of that group. So that is the Marie Keating Foundation for now. We're not finished yet. I'm actually going to introduce you now to Clare Leatham. So Clare is Clare is the project manager for cancer survivorship with the National Cancer Control Programme. And the primary focus of her role is to drive the implementations that advance the recommendations set out in the National Cancer Strategy. And that's really an important topic for us here today. She brings a solid background in operations across acute hospital and charity settings, along with an academic foundation in analytics and health research. Clare collaborates on and leads out on a number of initiatives, including the rollout stratified self-management follow-up pathways, and development of the survivorship patient pathway, as well as tumour-specific patient support passports. So Clare, I'm going to hand over to you now, and you're very welcome, and thank you for being here. Good morning, everyone. As Helen said, my name is Clare Leatham. I'm the Survivorship Project Manager at the NCCP, speaking today on behalf of Louise Mullen, who unfortunately couldn't be here. She's very sad to miss this, but she's in Canada at the moment and she sends her best wishes. I'd like to thank Helen and Liz for giving us the opportunity today for me to speak with you about the work that we do with the NCCP around cancer survivorship. That's the services that we fund, support and deliver, and most importantly how the lived experience is woven through all the work that we do at the NCCP. So this slide has moved a little bit, but it gives an indication of some of the focus points that we do as part of our work in the survivorship programme. So much of our work is informed by the findings of the National Needs Assessment, as well as the National Cancer Strategy. And so the needs assessment highlighted the gaps in services, which is voiced by patients and and healthcare workers, apologies, across the country. We look closely at the practice within cancer centres and how services are currently being delivered, where the gaps remain, and how we can ensure that the recommendations set out in the strategy are implemented on the ground. We acknowledge the challenges that are faced by patients living with a cancer diagnosis, and we are ensured that the lived experience is worked through every piece of work that we deliver. Looking outwards, we also look at best national and international practice and plan for continuous service improvement. So we bring together hospital and community services and build a link between supports and services. Our next next national cancer strategy is due soon, and we're eager to include a piece in this about metastatic cancers. So once we have a little bit more insight on what the strategy is going to look like, we'll be linking into patient groups around what pieces of work we can look at including in that. So to set a bit of context, so the basis of all our work is in the National Cancer Strategy. So the first National Cancer Strategy was developed in 2006, and this was a 10-year strategy with a vision to improve cancer control by reducing incidence, mortality and morbidity, and by reforming service delivery to provide high quality and equitable care. So this strategy was then evaluated in 2014 by a team of international experts, and then the feedback from this fed into our current National Cancer Strategy, which the vision of which is that together we will strive to prevent cancer and work to improve treatment, health, well-being and experiences and outcomes of those living with and beyond cancer. So this strategy contains key recommendations for the first time on psycho-oncology, survivorship, and also includes recommendations on the integration of services across the cancer care continuum. Importantly, this strategy was written with patients, so it was written in public consultation and with the National Patient Forum. Building on that then, we carried out a National Cancer Survivorship Needs Assessment in 2019, speaking directly to people across the country about their lived experience. And a lot of the work that we do is based on the outcome of this needs assessment because it identified the gaps that are in service at the moment. And again, this was raised by patients and healthcare workers working in cancer services. One of the main key findings was that patients needed more psychosocial services. There wasn't just a need for it, but also a knowledge on how to actually access these services. So out of this then came the psycho-oncology model of care, which was published in 2020. And then those two documents together identified the need that we needed increased number and capacity of support services, recognising the quality of services that exist in the community and voluntary sector, and also the need to integrate community and acute sector services. So together these provide the foundation of all the work that we do at the Survivorship programme at the NCCP. And this feedback also then led to the development of the Alliance of Community Cancer Support Centres and Services, which as that aims to
increase capacity, integrate the services between the acute and community, and create a consistent quality standard across the voluntary sector. So we have 21 community cancer support centres across the country, as well as a number of national organisations such as the Marie Keating Foundation that deliver vital services such as peer support networks. I think Helen ran through a number of really important survivorship programmes that's run through the Marie Keating Foundation, as well as a number of different survivorship programmes such as the Cancer Thrive and Survive. So available in almost all community cancer support centres and organisations in person and online are psychosocial supports and services, counselling services, information, survivorship services, physical activity programmes, peer and group supports, as well as access to NLD services for lymphedema and many more. So we work really closely with all of these services to implement the best practice guidance, which was published first in 2020. We really recognise the value that these services, we recognise the value of these services and work closely with the Department of Health to ensure that these services are fully funded, and we're working towards increasing the level of funding that is given towards the community cancer support centres and organisations. So our network is constantly growing. So over the Alliance, this year alone, we had 5,000 new clients accessing services within the Alliance network. And if we look at the data from 2024, at the end of that year, we had 21 full members and 20 associate members representing 21 counties within Ireland. We held 3 Alliance networks, which was attended by 125 representatives from the different cancer centres and organisations. The Alliance then ran 64 different survivorship programmes, which I'll talk about in the next slide, which was attended by 474 patients. So last year, our clients, apologies. Last year we saw just over 9,500 new clients accessing services within these centres, and that's online and face to face. And so in total then there was just under 17,000 clients accessing the services that are available through the Alliance. So the information that we have here is information that we collect on a monthly basis from all the different centres, and we feel that having this data to hand has really helped us build the case to increase funding for these services, and also to demonstrate just how busy these services are. We also use this data to ensure that the funding given by the Department of Health is distributed evenly towards the 21 members. So the NCCP then is also responsible for the national coordination of survivorship self-management programmes. So one of our key national programmes is the Cancer Thrive and Survive programme that's also delivered through the Marie Keating Foundation. This is a 6-week evidence-based programme that is delivered in person or online, like I said, through either the Marie Keating Foundation or individual cancer support centres, or in some hospitals as well. We have a number of other evidence-based survivorship programmes, such as Building Better Caregivers, which is a course, which is a programme for carers or family members of those supporting somebody with a cancer diagnosis. And then we also have Climb, which is a support programme for children impacted by a parent's diagnosis of cancer. And we also support workshops such as Leixslip, which is available nationally, delivered through the oncology team nurses and Daffodil nurses. Another programme that we're looking at working with the Irish Cancer Society on is the Living Life programme for people with advanced cancer. So we're just looking at the moment at the opportunities to re-establish that programme back. And we get feedback in every cycle of the support programmes that we do, and a bit of feedback that we received on the Cancer Thrive and Survive, particularly from patients with metastatic cancer, is that there can be mixed feelings around being in a group with patients with primary cancers. So there's kind of a feeling that you mightn't be able to open up fully when the group is mixed. So we are looking at the possibility of maybe creating a CTS group or running a programme that's specifically for patients with advanced or metastatic cancers. And to do that now we need a group of about 9 people, but that's just something we're looking at doing at the moment. We're always looking at increasing our bank of evidence-based survivorship programmes that we can stand over and provide funding for. So our latest survivorship development is the Empower Menopause and Cancer. So this is a program that was developed by ARC Cancer Support Centre in collaboration with UCD. So the NCCP part funded the development of research into the program so that it would have an evidence base behind it. Then we took over the national coordination from the ARC Centre and now delivering it nationally. So it's a 7-module program that so far has had very, very good feedback. It covers different topics such as exercise, nutrition, fatigue, managing menopause symptoms, sexual health, and emotional well-being. We're using a train the trainer model, so we're training leaders in cancer support centres to deliver this program across the country. So we're piloting it in 4 centres at the moment. And like I said, the feedback we've received has been really positive to date. We'll be meeting with the centres now before Christmas to see what the feedback is, if we need to make any changes, and then we're looking to train a further 2 centres in the new year so that we can offer this program across further centres in Ireland. And we have a lot of information around this. We've got a lot of leaflets and they've been very popular. So if anyone does have an interest in receiving more information about this, please feel free to let me know and we can get that organised. In generally, the SCP does provide funding to create the evidence base for these programs, so it's very important for us that any survivorship program is evidence based. So if anybody has any ideas for a survivorship program that they'd like to deliver, we're more than happy to look at providing funding for that. And so like that, feel free to contact us at that time. We take ad hoc applications, so we're really happy to stand over evidence-based survivorship programs. And there's another piece of work that we're doing, or the Alliance specifically is working with the Work in Cancer Initiative through Trinity St James's Occupational Therapy Department. So they're building an evidence base at the moment through funding that they've received through the HRB for a 4-year study about supporting patients going back to work after cancer. So like that, with all of our programs, the focus is the same. It's about creating evidence-based interventions that empower people living with and beyond cancer. Finally, I would just like to highlight how we ensure that the lived experience is rolled through every strand of work. So it is KPI within the NCCP that the lived experience is in every project that we deliver on within the NCCP. So we also sit on the Cancer Patient Advisory Committee within the Department of Health. And we do this for a number of reasons. One is to ensure the flow of communication between the Department of Health and the NCCP. The other is to inform the patients on the group of the work that the NCCP is currently doing. And also we use that forum to receive feedback from patients on work and projects that we're doing with the NCCP. We have patient and healthcare professionals as key members of our NCCP governance groups. And then we also run a number of healthcare professional forums and working groups. So one of those, for instance, is the Cancer Survivorship Steering Group. They're a group of, I'd say, about 20 members that I found very helpful consulting with in terms of my projects. They've given great feedback on, what pieces can be improved within the projects that we're delivering on. And we also host the Alliance Steering Group and networking events. And this year also, last year, we had patient service users join us in our evaluation of the community cancer support centres, which we found really brought great insight in our evaluation of the centres. So actually what we have on this slide, you might recognise our patient engagement manager, Dorothy, with a focus group there. We have Siobhan, who is one of our CTS leaders. So we take feedback from service users very seriously, and this shapes the future development of all of our survivorship programs and projects. So to summarise, our work is really grounded in national policy, guided by evidence and driven by the voices of those living with and throughout a cancer diagnosis. We're committed to supporting services that are consistent, high quality and accessible, and ensuring that every person living with and beyond cancer in Ireland feels supported to thrive. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak today. And I'll take any questions if there are any, and if we have time. Thank you, Clare. Does anybody have any questions for Clare? I'm also happy to take questions maybe after.
Yeah, you're here for the day, right?
Yes, I'm here for the day,
Yeah.
so I'm happy to take it.
Okay.
Chat.
Well, that's a long way over.
Thanks very much, Claire. I'm living with metastatic breast cancer, my name's Kira, and so I just wanted to ask about the upcoming national cancer strategy. It's very clear you're eager to include work on metastatic cancers, and I'd like to know about palliative care and how is the NCCP working to bring palliative care on board in the new national cancer strategy?
That's a great question. So the current national strategy is being evaluated, so that's by the Department of Health. So that sits in with them. Unfortunately, I don't have huge visibility over that. But certainly palliative care play a huge part across the cancer continuum. You know, we certainly believe that it's not just a case of end of life care. Palliative care certainly has a place much sooner across the patient pathway, and we do include that in that. I'm not entirely sure how it fits in, but certainly what I'll do is I might speak to you after, and I'll look at taking this back to my colleagues, and because that's the kind of feedback we want when we're developing the new cancer strategy, and we'll be coming to patient groups and taking that. So thank you.
Roseanne? When I was first diagnosed, went in quite heavily to the Kushner Centre and did a lot of things with them. And I do agree with what you said, being a metastatic cancer patient and with early stage people isn't appropriate. But it's like you were given 6 lots of counselling and then that's it. And now I'm 9 years down the track. So is there something whereby you are looking to provide kind of annual services for people who are living with it long term, rather than the crisis services that you get when you're first diagnosed? And then how do you know to go back to them? How do you know when they're running a program that suits you when you are removed from the support services?
Okay, no, great question. You know, that's there is a 6-week or 6 session within the centres, and I think it fits in with the sort of, like you said, that I think the word you used actually was the crisis. Yeah. I mean, it's looking at the longer term. Again, that's something we'll have to take into consideration when we are looking at the next national cancer strategy, and how that looks long term. And obviously that's something we still need to, you know, figure out. But that's something I'll certainly take back to the groups and see if there is a way of bringing that in. And your next question, apologies, was around.
Oh, that, like, once you're out of that crisis, so like I have been to the Kushner Centre for 8 years, so I don't even know what they're running now. Like, where is that information, how is it to access, and how do I have to check every month and see if something's suitable for me is coming up, or what? Because it's different, obviously, in your early stage, you are on a roller coaster, or you're on a treadmill, and you get, this is the next thing, this is the next thing, but there is no next thing to us.
So actually within the Alliance we do a lot of different work. There's different working groups actually under the Alliance, and we're actually looking at that at the moment as well. So there would be working groups set up looking at the intake there's a lot of work being done on the intake of the at the centres, and not so much on the discharge and follow-up. So there's a couple of different options that centres could take, and again this will be worked through the working groups, and again that's something I'll take back and see what they say. But we are looking at having a proper discharge in place, but then there being a follow-up after that, say, where you have the patient, you have the profile of the service users at the centre, and say there might be an agreement between the service user and the centre at discharge. How often would you like to be informed of company services? So we do recommend, and we've done a lot of peer reviewing of the centres that are all part of the Alliance, and we do recommend that follow-up to be consistent, and as part of that there needs to be a proper intake session, a proper discharge session, and then there has to be that agreement between the service user and the centre on what services they would like to hear about in the future. So that is ongoing work, but certainly that's something I'll take to the working group, and I might be able to provide you feedback or an update from them.
And I just remembered one more thing. So when I was first diagnosed and I knew I left the hospital, didn't get any psycho-oncology or anything like that. Ended up bawling my eyes out in Tesco's, Googling, trying to find where my nearest cancer centre is. So is there an option whereby we can have the hospitals say, would you like me to pass your phone number on to your local cancer support centre? So then it's more of a thing they call you, rather than when you're up to 90 in your head trying to find where you should be going.
Yeah, we are looking at strengthening the connections between the hospitals and the centres, and that's a really important point. I think when your team advise you to go somewhere, you're more likely to go than say when you're not sure and you pick up the phone to your local centre. So we are strengthening those connections, and certainly there is that option, and that's something we'll be bringing back to the teams as well. So thanks for raising that.
And we do have somebody here from the Cushla Cancer Support Centre, so you might connect later on. Was on with Kate.
Yes, I'm happy.
Clare, I'd just like to make a comment, and thank you for the wonderful presentation. You mentioned that you might trial, a 6-week program for people with metastatic cancer. And we did that actually back in 2016. Roseanne and Anya were part of that. And it was very challenging because of the nature of illness, the nature of, recurrent regular treatments. And that's where the positive living came from, where we actually set up monthly meets, because it's probably much more appropriate, much more doable for people, for anybody who's on regular scanning, regular treatments. Of course, as what even today, some people haven't felt well enough to be here, and that has to be considered too. But it's just worth saying that. Yeah. Okay. Are we ready to move to more questions? Saoirse?
Thanks, Helen. Thanks very much, Clare, for your presentation. It was really interesting to see the breadth of the work that's been undertaken and the extent of the interaction and liaison with various other bodies. I think that's really helpful for us as patients to see. I was kind of internally kind of cringing and kind of laughing at the idea of discharge. You were talking about the cancer centres and services, because for us there's no discharge.
Yeah.
We don't do discharge.
Yeah.
We're always there until we die.
Yeah.
And it just really resonated with me, because it's clear that for the new cancer strategy, if it's genuinely the case that metastatic or advanced cancer is going to be taken on board, it's really, really essential that liaison, thorough and meaningful liaison is done with us, with the patients. There's a lot of information, a lot of little subtleties that just aren't always obvious, even to professionals working in the field who are working with us to give us our cancer treatments week in, week out, to support us, even the psycho-oncologists. And there's a good group here with the I think that really could help with that, and would be very willing to do that in a positive spirit to make a contribution.
No, and thank you for saying that. And it's something that it comes up all the time, language, and it's so important. And thank you for pointing it out, because it does just kind of slip out a little bit. And I'm sorry to say that, I have a patient with advanced cancer in one of my projects, and she keeps the whole group honest every time we're on a call, and it can be the subtlest of wording that you'd never think twice about, that has a massive impact on her. And she's really helped shape, so this is the lung passport, which is like a separate, but she's really helped shape the look and the language within that passport, because she has done it. So, and it's made it much better now. So no, I appreciate, and perhaps discharge, you're right, that's another way we can reword that. I suppose it's around having that, it's more having the agreement with someone around what contact do you want from us as a centre going forward. Do you want to hear from us every month, or do you want to just take your time and come back to us how you feel? But you're dead right on that word, so I'm just underlining that here, and I'll be taking that back to the group.
Interesting, one of our activities today is over here around language, what language, so it's a consultation with us as patients about what language what are we finding difficult, what are we finding works and so on, so
Yeah.
it's certainly been recognised within this group as well, that language is an issue.
It's big, it's a really good piece, yeah. What language hurts and what helps. Claire, thank you so much. Thank you very much. So I'd like to invite Francis and John to come up and sit at this table here. We're going to talk a little bit about, I'm just going to go through a couple of slides on uncertainty and have a conversation about just bear with me a second. So what does uncertainty mean? You know more about this in the room than I do, but I'm just putting a few thoughts together, I guess, before we start the conversation. I don't know what the future holds. And then living with that uncertainty and trying to stay calm within it for the rest of your life, is a tall order. So why do we say that? Because cancer is a life-changing event. Okay, we've all heard of the old life. We've heard of the new normal, haven't we? And what is that? So cancer is a life-changing event. It changes the way you think and it changes the way you feel. A lot of people would have said in some of the programs we've run, everyone keeps expecting me to go back to normal. I don't know what normal is anymore. So, you know, many of you have said in the room, you know, I can't find the old Yvonne again. She's not there. She's not there. And it's kind of that acceptance and moving into the new Yvonne as she is after a cancer diagnosis. And again, I would reiterate, I don't know what the future holds for me. It's pretty much what uncertainty is. In the context of cancer care, uncertainty refers to a person's inability to determine the meaning of illness-related events. This can arise from ambiguity, so conflicting or incomplete information, and I'm sure you've all experienced that. Complexity, so the difficult to understand information because of the language that's used or the terminology, the medical terminology that is used. Or the unpredictability, so the unknown future outcomes. And again, I have heard every one of you speak about that, the unknowns. It is persistent. It actually continues through your cancer journey, from diagnosis to long-term survivorship and beyond. And we have John and Francis here in the room. You know, we're talking 20 years on. We wouldn't have been saying this 10 years ago, I think. It's absolutely incredible to be able to have this experience today of a conversation from a husband and wife, you know, 20 years on from a breast cancer diagnosis. But of course, we have to consider the impact, both physically and emotionally. And these are just some of them to consider while we have our conversation. It's very variable from one person to another. It can depend on a person's age, their own health status, how the diagnosis was received in the first place, and that's going to be spoken about here with deliverables. The side effects of treatment, long-term, short-term, how they affect you, your personality, the support network you have, or maybe the support network you don't have. And I know from facilitating the possibility, it took some of you quite a long time to find, we call it your tribe, because you didn't know, Roseanne said it, she didn't really know where to look. You know, she's crying in Tesco's, she doesn't know where to look, nobody's told her. It changes your role, both maybe at work and at home as a family member, as a mother, sister, aunt. It can have huge changes in your social life during and after your treatment. You may not be in contact with your friends as much as you used to be. We've often heard a lot that you lose friends because of cancer. And you make your world very small sometimes because we don't have the energy. You may feel less comfortable or confident doing things that you found easy before. We talk about chemo brain, foggy brain. We've heard a lot of conversations about people going back to work after cancer, and they feel very, very vulnerable because they don't know whether they can actually do what they did before their cancer, whether they can remember the things that they knew, and whether they have the energy to carry it on. The side effects of treatment can greatly impact confidence because tiredness, and things like incontinence, pain, they all have their own challenges. And socializing becomes difficult with that. It can change the way you feel about your body. And that doesn't necessarily have to be visible to anybody. It's about your body and how you feel. So as I said earlier, it changes the way you think and it changes the way you feel. Oops. So this is a wheel we use in Cancer Thrive and Survive. You all know those issues there, cancer and the effects of treatment. If you've got pain, you may have problems sleeping. That may cause tiredness, fatigue, stress, anxiety. Living with uncertainty, we're talking about here, can create difficult emotions and can even create depression. So it all needs to be taken into consideration. And we need to figure out ways where we can break that cycle to make living with uncertainty easier for us. And that's not an easy task. So we're asking, what is it like living with uncertainty? Are you okay? Well, yes, I might be okay today, but I'm not okay tomorrow. I wasn't okay yesterday. So a couple of things that we might think about doing would be, we need to listen very differently to ourselves. So this takes time. And I know a lot of you have done it in the group. We need to hear clearly. We need to understand carefully. We need to feel with honesty. We need to allow ourselves to be supported, and we need to practice self-compassion. And many do that in the room, probably every now and again. But the important thing here is that you need to get to know you more, and get to know that feeling of uncertainty when it's coming upon you and what you do about it. And it really is about checking in with yourself, and checking in regularly as well. Many times during the day, if you're kind of in that kind of state. A lot of people, you talk about anxiety, that's a huge span of anxiety before the lead up to a scan. And I know we're going to talk about that a little bit, Francis. The lead up to a scan and then the lead up to results. You're gonna ask yourself how you're feeling right now in your body, and how your emotions are, and what your thoughts are like. Are they erratic? Are they nice and paced? Is there clarity or is there confusion? And then just thinking about how you're feeling. So taking notice of yourself, like, I like that thought, or I can't bear that feeling. I shouldn't be thinking or feeling like this, and I should be thinking and feeling like she does. So what we really need to do when we deal with anxiety is try to observe ourselves with respect and curiosity, and that's really, really important. Don't beat yourselves up. It is about respect and it is about curiosity, and just observe and feel the anxiousness. But don't rush away, from the feeling either, because it's actually quite normal. And don't ruminate on it either. And we talk about gratitude journals as well, because that's really what puts us in a positive mode most of the time. But realizing that we can't be like that all of the time. So this is kind of my last slide here before we lead into the conversation, but these are some of the things that I know the ladies in the group are doing, and apologies for those who are not in the group, but after this you might want to join the group, because these are the things that happen and what people share within the group, and they're very real. Building a realistic, practical self-support plan for yourself, structured personal self-care and rest. And Siobhan, if you don't mind, I'm going to use you as an example here, because Siobhan said to me one day, I'm actually putting my rest period in my calendar. And I went, wow, that's pretty good. So she knew that she wasn't available to anybody apart from herself. Achievable and realistic exercise plan. Again, don't try to overdo your exercise plan, because what does that do? Makes you feel bad about yourself if you can't complete. Eat as healthily as possible. and avoid unhealthy mood altering substances. Avoid comparing yourselves to others, that's really important, isn't it? Comparing yourself to others. Learn something new, however small, every single day. Talk about your anxiety. Ease up on technology, we're all into technology and social media at the moment. So being part of that is hard. Practice mindfulness regularly. And we're going to do a little bit of different mindfulness practice this afternoon in the silent disco. So that'll be something that you can maybe take home with yourselves. Dance like nobody's watching. And just work towards being a bit more observant rather than being hyper vigilant, you know, not allowing it to take over. So being tolerant with yourself, being accepting of what's happening with you, and being compassionate with yourself. And then just, you know, evoking some sort of feeling of love and connection. There's an awful lot of love and connection in this group, in this room. And it is extremely positive and it's a good feeling, isn't it? Okay, so I'm going to move over now to Frances and John, who we really do have the greatest privilege to have here with us today. And I've actually really had the privilege of reading John's story and Frances' story. And I'm now going to we're going to have a conversation around that, like pick up on some of the really important points that have been made over 20 years. So welcome. I'm so sorry. Now, I guess I'm going to start off, Frances, with you were diagnosed, I know in December, 20 years ago. Yeah, at the age of 35.
I was 35.
And you had 2 young children, John, and you had 2 young children. You had Emer.
Yeah, and Bill, there were 5 and 7 at the time.
Yeah, and while I was reading your story, I just felt that was probably the most difficult thing that you had almost experiencing at that moment in time.
Oh, absolutely. You know, the primary diagnosis was hard enough, I suppose, but I kind of thought, I managed this. It's 6 months. By the time I'm 36, it'll be all over, done and dusted. And then the big shock came that, you know, there was a bone involvement, and I crumbled, started shaking. It was my worst fear, really, you know. And my main reaction, so it was grief, but it was sadness for all the things I may or may not, I may miss, you know, mainly my children growing up. That was hard. Yeah.
One of the words that struck me in your storyline was you were shook.
Yeah, I was shaken to the core because before I had worked as a nurse, so you know, to me there was a huge difference in primary and secondary diagnosis at the time. I've looked after patients, you know, who were very, very ill with secondary diagnosis, and that's what's staring me in the face, really, you know. And I really did not think I would survive very long.
Were you and John, I know you were with Frances all the day, that you figured and knew that you had secondary breast cancer, as you said. Were you given any hope at all at that point in time?
Yeah. My oncologist at the time was very, very good, really. He did say that it is now being treated as a chronic illness, which can, you know, which it is now, and that he's also told me that day that in the previous 3 years there has been more drug development than in previous decades. So he said it was, as hard as it was, you know, it was a good thing. So that really kind of comforted me, to be honest. And even the medicines I'm on now, they were only developed 7 to 8 years ago.
Yeah, and that was kind of a trend right through your story, wasn't it? Like new medicines were turning off at different intervals when you needed them. Very reassuring.
Absolutely, and for that I'm very grateful, you know, for research and all the people who work in that area, you know. And then of course, you know, cancer mutates, so I'm kind of on different levels now, you know, than what I was on 20 years ago.
John, how was it for you to be at that appointment on that day?
Similarly, the main reaction was shock initially that that this couldn't possibly be real, particularly considering Francis' age. And then I suppose I work in healthcare as well, so my next instinct was to find information and to talk to somebody who could help. So as Francis said, I think when we talked to the oncologist, there was huge reassurance in that, even just making the contact and then having some sort of plan set out. It was those days between the news and meeting the oncologist were difficult. And he described those treatments as being targeted, which was, again, as Francis described over the years, the huge change, I suppose, in that the wide variety of different treatments and they target cancer cells in so many different ways that creates so many options then for the oncologists. And fortunately, I suppose that gave us a lot of reassurance and still has over the course of it over the last 20 years.
I read that you badgered the oncologist for a prognosis. That was quite brave, wasn't it?
And yeah, we almost harassed him, I would say, because at that moment, I suppose, we're looking for some sort of certainty, you know, and Francis said about the age of the children, you know, I'm thinking of milestones which his reassurance was palpable in that he described those advances in treatment and the acceleration of them, particularly even at that stage 20 years ago. So that has continued over the past 2 decades as well. And that, I suppose, while he wasn't able to give us a definite prognosis in terms of timelines or anything, but he was very positive at the same time.
And how were you emotionally?
At the time, all over the place, because I suppose the children were very young, so what I tried to do was to focus on making the various different arrangements around the children and the appointments, the logistics, so to speak, while trying to support the cancer best equipment. I would say it's very challenging at that point in time.
You took on a very practical role.
Yeah.
And how was it for you, Francis, having John there by your side on that day?
Oh sure, I just rely on John. He's become my stalwart, really, you know, because I just wasn't able to take in much, to be honest. So I was relying on him, as I always seem to do, you know, and so far he's done well. He's actually, yeah, he's, there's times. Really around my energy, especially when you tell me, no, I might have been in for a few days, and then I've gone scraps and I'm hey, I'm ready to go, you know, and I have all these plans in my head, completely unrealistic, I suppose. But you know, when you have that energy comes back, and he's looking at me and he's there saying, Francis, you're not able to do that today. And I think, what are you talking about? The energy's back, I'm grand. But actually what it is he wasn't able to do it because he had been carrying the can for the few days that I was out of action. And he was tired and thinking, I'm not able to do this. So that actually caused a lot of friction for a lot of time until we got talking really about it, you know, and I said, John, you know, you have to spell it out. So now that's what we do. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, but you know, to get to get to where we need to go, we have to be very, very honest and open.
Yeah, it's an interesting lesson to learn, isn't it? Because when I read your stories, energy was a big part, factored in both of your stories, and vice versa. And John not having the energy when you had it. So it's an interesting concept, isn't it? Amongst husband and wife or partners.
You know, and he was probably busy with the kids, and he didn't want to be saying to me, I'm feeling tired today. You know, he was trying to be, I suppose, supportive. But I wasn't probably being supportive to him.
This is learning, I suppose, over time, but it would feel very wimpish for me to be saying I'm tired. And Francis is the one that's gone through the treatments and the chemotherapy and the side effects and all that. So, but just as Francis said to me, and frequently says it since, can you just spell it out? You know, so that
Clear, yeah.
the tools can deal with it rather than there being kind of some ambiguity in the room.
Yeah, clear communication.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Francis, you said something interesting as well in your story that you lived through the stages of grief and loss. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
I was just very sad. I was angry. I came across, I suppose, as not that I don't want to say that I didn't mind having primary breast cancer, but you know, I thought, okay, it happens, it's happened to me, I can try and deal with it as best as I can. And then, you know, then I got the sucker punch, and I thought, well, you know, how much more do you want to throw at me, you know? And that I was angry. I was then, you know, denial, I suppose, is a part of it. But at the back of it all was sadness. The sadness of potential loss of what's going on. There was loss of my job, a potential job that I was hoping to get. The big thing was, up until that point, John's job had been quite busy, not hadn't been any busier. But I was the one there all the time with the children, and it was always mammy, 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 mammy. And that was changing. And this was going to John more and more. And that was painful. You know. Yeah.
So kind of a movement, we kind of said it in the slides there early on, you know, a change in role.
And change
Another change in role.
Yeah, yeah.
Where did you, I know you said you went to Solace Cancer Support Centre because Fushimura wasn't open at the time. What did they do for you and for Emer and Bill and John? What was on offer?
For me, I had counselling, which was actually very, very good. It allowed me to voice things that I at the time wasn't able to voice to John. But following on from that, John and I have had conversations very early on, I suppose, about potentially me not being there anymore, and you know how we would manage them, or even prior to that, you know. So that was very enlightening. I went to a breast cancer support group, and it was very, very good. Don't get me wrong. But I was the one in the room that nobody wanted to be, you know. They were all saying, oh, you know, the fear of coming back, and what would I do? And I'm there thinking, I have this big red flag on my head, and you know, or they'd say to me, but you're looking so well. You know, and then we were did art therapy. And that was the most amazing thing that for our family. It just came out of themselves. And this is something I didn't mention before, and I hadn't noticed it, I thought about it for a while. My head was always cold, so I used to always wear a hat, and I'd have a dressing gown or something on. The moment Emer came home from school, Emer put on a hat, put on a dressing gown, I never, it took me a long time to notice that, like we were two buddies just hanging out.
Mom and daughter.
Yeah.
Okay. There's something else you had said in your story, and I really liked the sound of it. It was like you decided to turn yourself into a positive statistic. Here you are.
Yeah. I suppose I found that the more I was feeling sorry for myself, it wasn't doing my energy any good. It wasn't doing my mental health any good. So, you're reading all about the statistics of how many years of survival of this. And I kind of just out of the blue one day said, well, sure, why can't I be a positive statistic? And then my mindset changed. I decided that, I was going to be the one. Now I'm probably very slow at pushing myself forward. So this was completely out of the blue for me, and from then I kind of said, okay, I can be that one. And it made my days easier. I became happier and I worried less.
And that's something else that you both said, really. It's the faith, hope, and don't worry. How do you do that?
Well,
Sounds easy, but I'm sure it's not.
because in the car coming from scan results, and it was because of the really difficult time. And trying to, I suppose, figure some of these things out all at the same time, and to try and come up with just some, I suppose, it will keep it together for us. Both Francis, worlds.
It came from, I suppose, the sense of Padre Pio, and is faith, hope, and don't worry. So my faith is in goodness of God. It's also in the faith of my doctors and nurses, because they have to know what they're doing and I have to let them. I hope that my medicines do what they are supposed to do, which so far they have been doing, thankfully. And the hardest of all is not worrying. And that, I found scan, sometimes you'd be thinking, oh, I have 12 weeks to my next scan. And you kind of think for the first week or two, that's a long way off. But it started approaching my mind more and more. Then again, another one of my days, I had a revelation, one thought anyway, and I kind of said to myself, well, there's really nothing I can do about the day of the scan or the day coming up to the scan. So what am I wasting my energy on and my thoughts on this when I could be doing or thinking of something else? Now it's not easy and it's taken me a long time. Now I don't think of my scan days. Like on my second scan, I cried the whole way through it. So this has been a long evolving journey. So I now don't think of my scan days. I allow myself, and if we're driving up to the results, we maybe talk about it a little bit. We talk about the potentials of it being a negative result, that we need more treatments, how it would impact on us. And then we kind of say, well, sure, it's all right, we just carry on. And that's how I manage that. It's it's just the way I do it, because it's the only way. It doesn't take away my contentness.
Yeah. Okay. There was something else interesting in your stories as well, and you both said it, and I like the idea of it, and I maybe the audience to hear this as well, is asking for help, because I know in the room people really do find it difficult to ask for help, particularly for themselves. So how was that? How did you do that?
In the beginning, out of necessity, I suppose, I certainly never had as many women with mobile phone before or since. And that was where the children were in the beginning classes in primary school, and all the various different activities and I was getting hiccups at different times, and people just came forward at that stage. And I think probably partly because it was new, it was news, they were shocked as well, and they had a very good bond with Francis and wanted to help. But further on, then I suppose the two of us kind of, people get used to that, and they kind of the attention maybe goes off it, and but anybody that we did ever look to, whether it was family or friends, and often people maybe that we weren't that close to, but you're just looking for somebody to pick up one of the kids or something like that, and they feel delighted to be the one picked out and asked to do it. And the response is usually really positive.
I was about 6 months into my treatments, and John was delegated something, so I was there thinking, okay, who can I ask? And there was a lady, I knew she was going to be, Valerie was going to be picking up her own children that day. So I texted her and asked her, would she be able to help me out? Which she did. And she got out of the car when she arrived home with the two lads. And she gave me a big hug and a kiss. And what she said to me was, Francis, thank you so much for letting me help you. And that has stuck with me 19 and a half years later. So then it made me more gracious in asking and accepting help, because that was a huge, huge learning curve for me. Then I did think, well, if somebody else in the school was like me, sure, wouldn't I have to be asked? Or just do it,
What do we say in the group? Giving is a gift and receiving is a gift. I'll always remember that, probably going to finish up soon. Time are we at now? Probably got a few more minutes left, good. There's something else you said, Francis, which is interesting, but I'd like you to explain this. I'd like to explain what this means. You said you can't make your illness easy for others.
No, I can't. It has really upset some people in my life, more earlier on than not. And some people are not in my life anymore because it just was too hard for them. So I have to graciously accept that. And my energy has to go into my treatments, went into my family, staying well. In the interim, then, when you are well, you see people only probably meet me when I'm well. They don't really see me the days I'm lying on the couch. And they think, sure, that's how I am all the time. That's not how it is all the time. But I have had to learn, at the beginning I did thought, what have I done? But it's a difficulty that they have and their inability to cope. So I have to say, that's okay, but I can't go there. I can't make it easier.
So it's self-preservation.
Self-preservation.
Yeah. Okay, and there's just a couple of other things. You're part of the Positive Living Group. Anybody who's in Waterford and Congreve in 2023 would have met Frances standing up saying she was 17 years with metastatic breast cancer, and even 3 years ago that was kind of almost unbelievable. She's still here today, so it's fantastic. I suppose within the whole setting though, you do see people, and we've talked about this as well, you do see people die, friends have died, obviously it's part of the span of life and how things happen in life. But you have kind of expressed this survivorship guilt.
Absolutely, yeah. Some of my friends that I would have known in Kilkenny and was diagnosed with breast cancer after me have died. Pretty young women, maybe a little bit older than me, but pretty young. And I kind of feel, well, my God, why then? Why not me? And I think it's a very normal thing to think. I wish I had an answer for it. I don't know. I don't do anything differently than most. But that survivorability is there. But again, when when it has happened that people I know have died, and there is sadness, and I accept that, and I express it. But then I have to, again, it sounds kind of a bit selfish, but it's actually not. It's just, again, self-preservation. Because if I wallow in that too much, it only brings me down, and I'm not good for anyone or anything. So I think about it, I process it, I'm sad about it, and then I say, okay, now I have to park it and move on. And you know, with the Marie Keating Positive Living Group, it's always acknowledged when somebody from our group passes away. And it's a very sad meeting, but it's also a very poignant meeting, and it's good. I don't know how I'm really expressing it, but it's good to acknowledge, and it's real, you know, because this is what, you know, it's in front of us every day, you know, the possibility of a shortened lifespan.
Yeah, and many members would say it's, you know, the acknowledgement is that, you know, you'll be remembered, you know, and that's important, I think.
You know, when I did hear about the Marie Keating Positive Living Group, I thought, oh my God, that sounds very interesting. And eventually, you know, I was talking to you, and for me, it's such a safe space. I have never yet come off a Zoom meeting feeling depressed, down, or not in good form. There's always, while there may be sad times in it, there's always an uplifting part of our meetings, and our meetups in person are wonderful.
This lady can dance. She was boogieing at our meeting in August right here, so keep your eyes on her outside of disco. I think on that note, I would like to say a huge thank you to Francis and John for doing this today. And it's Francis that came to me and said, Helen, I'd love to tell my story, and I think we'd love to hear it. Because 20 years of, you know, living with uncertainty in a space is no mean feat, and loads of lessons learned.
I don't realise that myself, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And if someone had told me 20 years ago I would be doing something like this 20 years ago, I would run out the door. Well, afraid that I'm doing it, but also delighted that I'm here.
Well, it's an amazing privilege and amazing to hear your story. And thank you both, Francis and John. I guess if there's any questions you want to ask Francis and John, they'll be around. Yeah, they'll be around today. So. Now we're moving into the four corners. So are you all okay? Everybody okay?